Okay, so these are common C titles. CFO, COO, CIO, CMO, CHRO. CPO, Chief Partner Officer, not yet. Now what's intriguing is, these are the top 5 things that the C-suite cares about. They're looking to find growth. There's anemic growth in the C-suite. They want hyper growth. They want fast growth. They actually think they need to take on more risk. They don't think they're taking enough risk to achieve that level of growth. They need to leverage technology better, they need to pursue innovation, and they need better people and culture. And so if you think as an alliance professional, do we check the boxes? Let's see. Alliances are a huge driver of growth. Alliances introduce risk and complexity. Alliances leverage technologies. One of the biggest reasons why we do alliances is because we look at our technology stack and we say, oops, missing thing, let's get one. Alliances, innovation. I mean, we miss innovation, we get innovation with partners, and alliances bring people and culture. So if you're not already getting the punchline, which is, if alliances do all of that, then this box right here should be Chief Partner Officer, but it isn't. Which it means one of 2 things. Either alliance professionals should potentially look at other opportunities to excel, or we should figure out what alliance professionals need in order to be able to address these things, which are intrinsic to alliances, but are nonetheless not being operationalized. So, we've covered a lot of these data points. So, 30% of enterprise revenue are tied to strategic alliance, which means that if 60 to 90% of them are not successful, how much more would this be if there were? I mean, it's like trillions of dollars of value that's left on the table. I think, Michael, you said it right. Mm-hmm. The opportunity cost to get alliances right is humongous. If you look at the failure rate, something about half of them are related to poorly managed relationships. We like to say that alliances is the 25-mile marathon that went wrong. Because you did that fantastic 25 marathon, and then you took a tea break, and what happened? You did not win. And where do alliances fail? Do they fail the corporate boardroom? Do they fail because the Wall Street Journal ad wasn't properly written? Do they fail because there's not sponsors? Do they fail because there's lack of strategy? Do they fail because there's lack of integration, lack of proper terms? Sometimes, but most of them fail because the last mile is broken, and we've talked extensively about that. Region doesn't know about it, the region's not aligned for it, the region doesn't have an engagement model, 2 partners can't get together, 3 partners are impossible, and then the relationships fail. And then, of course, suggesting the fact that maybe we need a new relationship model. So we're kind of big on WorkSpan because we think the engagement model is the right foundation to drive automation, engagement, and reporting and visibility. We think these are the 3 things that need to happen if we're going to have a new model. So this raises the question then of why aren't strategic partners managed strategically? And so what I thought we could do here is just kind of have a discussion around the room of what people think about some of the answers to these questions. Is it a top line problem? In other words, is it that no one can prove growth? That if we could prove that if you put $1 million into the alliance, you'd get 100 million back, and you could prove growth? Is it you have the dollars to show the revenue growth? Is it that you can't get the return on investment? Or is it the culture problem that, but I was asking that question of is partnering a foreign object? So I'm just wondering if maybe we could spend a little time as a team talking about this.
Is it unidentified foreign object? Unidentified
well, it's an identified foreign object, I think, right? It's people know about it, but then they respond. But I'm just wondering, from your experience as alliance professionals, which of these things are some of the things that have come up for you when you say, yeah, that really is the challenge for us. So what does everybody think?
Take a swing at things. So.
Yeah.
I think the fundamental problem is having a clear glossary of definitions, right? It's been highly qualitative and extremely subjective. What's strategic to me might not be strategic to you. Right? So if we objectivize it, okay, so how do you define strategic? Well, you got to get me $10 million of revenue, you got to do this, you got to do that. It has to be an extremely crisp term sheet of items that are extremely unambiguous, if that's possible, right? So we need to start with that, and then that would separate the boys from the men. Right. Pardon the vernacular, there are women in the room here, but that would separate out, okay, so do you really want to play ball? I want to be a strategic partner. Okay, I do too. Okay, great. What does that mean to you? Oh, I don't know, I haven't really given it much thought. But instead, can you do A, B, C, and D? Yes, okay, so we'll partner.
Well, where do you think that taxonomy should be set? of what is the strategic partner? Is it a board problem? Is it a CEO problem? Because ultimately, if you have a strategy, right, you should be able to say, okay, our strategy is this and this, and partners fit here, and so the ones who can do this stuff for us should be our top partners. So where do you think the problem is in defining that strategic?
I've mostly worked in small companies, right, that have started and built out the partner program, and in my view, so my view is going to be extremely myopic to that, right? So I worked in SAP, etc., so I wouldn't know. But so in my view, the tactics will drive the strategy. It's like a self-fulfilling, right? So, I'll go out and reach out. Okay, so we're going to drive deals. Do you like this technology? It's going to be, super disruptive. Are you on board, right? And continue to fail fast and recalibrate, right? So I go after 4 or 5 of them. Where are the deals? What's going on? And so that way I get a measurement of what my current state is with that, SI ecosystem, for the lack of a better word, right? And then 6 months down the road, I can say, okay, it's kind of amoebic when it started. Kind of looks like a circle now, right? I don't know if it was a circle or a square. It looks like a circle. So maybe I'll start tranching them and say, okay, so you're number 1, number 2, number 3, and the ability and the nimbleness and quickly recalibrating that up to a point where you get to a semblance of steady state, right? Is going to be ever changing.
Yeah, what I think is interesting is you talked about the idea of taxonomy. I wonder if the word strategic partner is just because mamby-pamby word that doesn't really mean anything, but it's used to label a partner who's complicated, or a partner who can't be a VAR. They'll never be a VAR. They'll never resell our stuff. They don't fit into a program.
I don't know who you are. Right?
Yeah.
Well, and it also is suggestive of a mismatch, right? So a partner that is strategic to a startup may even sign an agreement that has the word strategic in it with a systems integrator for whom that startup is, disposable at best.
Right, but their motivation for the startup's motivation could be that they need the mind share with the bigger company's customer,
Absolutely.
right? And so that's always a Trojan horse or something. I think the middle two, from my perspective, are the ones that are the toughest. I do believe it's a CEO board type of aha moment, because when I came into the company, they hired me in to do lines because I couldn't spell it. Big company growing fast as heck. And I got people saying, why would I want a partner? I mean, first I made my quota in June, and second of all, they're gonna take away my business, But once our CEO met with one of his peers at a very large enterprise software company, and they said, let's do something transformational, big in the marketplace, and it was successful, and others started to watch, and they go, okay, I better get in line or I'm done. So I think that kind of thing needs to happen.
That's the growth one, right?
Well, yeah, but it's when they say it's not top down, just because the CEO says you will partner, that's not going to make it work. When he did it and he showed people, the company, how it was successful, because he and his peers said, let's do something major in the market. We know it's going to take a big investment. Let's do it. We know it's going to take time. Everybody saw it and they go, wow, right? So then now that's not going to be a problem. But it's the top line growth and providing ROI as far as expanding the team that's going to support partnership. Here's the lines is the problem.
You said something interesting though, which is maybe it's also another one is that we have difficulty using the best practice, because that's a best practice that you said, to drive repeatability. Like for some reason, even though, raise your hand if you can remember an example of an alliance that has worked, where you can point to a person who's a hero, but for some reason, that doesn't get replicated, right? It's like, Bob is nailing it, but it's Bob.
Yeah.
Only Bob. There's only one Bob, right? And I wonder if that's one of the problems. Is it's kind of like this black box thing of why does Bob get it? I don't know. Somehow unpacking the secrets and then applying. Is that something?
I think that's exactly. I think that's the difficulty, because it is one person. Well, in the case I gave, it was one person that said, you will do this and I will help you along the path, along the journey. But then everybody said, okay, we've got to do the investment. And they were willing to invest ahead of the curve because the big guy said we're going to invest ahead of the curve. And then after it did come to fruition, there was revenue and tremendous amount of mind share and market share and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, I'll just add, at least in terms of our company, I work for Huawei, and in that last one, culture, has been kind of a big challenge for us in terms of embracing kind of the alliance value proposition. To our traditional business, telco, working with carriers, can we do it all ourselves? No partners involved. The customer
So much
intimacy-
easier.
Customer intimacy. We don't want to give up that control of the customer, but then as we entered the enterprise business 5 or 6 years ago, the partners were essential for us to be able to achieve customer success. But it's created this whole cultural kind of transformation that's needed.
So the culture shifted?
Culture shifted.
That's cool.
But also, I think the problem is, and it's all of those, a successful partnership, it almost has to be, magic, because if both companies, let's make it simple, both companies almost have to have the same mindset for investment, right? Make it just a strategic part of it. And then also the culture has to be a good fit, right?
Yeah.
There has to be, we're gonna take 6 months to get this off the ground. Everybody okay with that? Yeah, fine. We're gonna invest $1 million each. Everybody, okay, we're fine. And just how we go to market. We trust you, not distrust you type of thing. Because I think that's important as well.
Just one more point I'd like to add, which is everybody keeps in partnerships. Everybody talks about upside. Nobody talks about downside, right? Both parties should have equal downside, right? I've been in a lot of situations where my downside is tremendous, and the guy sitting across the table, there's zero downside. If you don't share, if you're not down in the trenches with me, sharing downside with me, then this is just a Barney partnership.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Alan, could you expand on the phrase "manage strategically"? What does what are other strategic projects in a company that are managed strategically? What do you have in mind there?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, if something's important to the C-suite, then a person of power and authority is given responsibility, and they're given budget. What do you know? Money, which is like partners are almost always the cheap suit, right? Who has extra money for partners, except with the exception of the unspent MDI? So they're a person of authority, is given a lot of power, they're given budget, and there's a lot of eyes on it. And I think the reason the strategic partners are not managed strategically is because the individual who's hired, and this is no offense to me or any of us, is not necessarily the most important person. I once had an EVP at a Fortune 500 company, one down from the CEO, and I'll not name his name, at dinner time, tell me, I've never met a partner executive worth shit. I was an EVP at a Fortune top 20 software company. Can you believe that crap?
Yep.
He might be right too much, because oftentimes he said, you know who takes partnering jobs? The people who can't cut it on direct sales. That's pretty bad. You don't manage strategically if you get some warm body to do the job. Then the other part is what Michael said. Where's Michael? Did he leave? He had so many good things to say. He left. He said that the discipline doesn't exist. To manage something strategically, you have to have discipline. You have to be able to measure, you have to be able to track, you have to have automation. That's why we're all here, right? We're all
I was
residents.
going to make a comment along those lines. I kind of come from a marketing background, actually. And for those who've been around as long as I have, many years, there was always a VP of marketing, but there was never a CMO. And in fact, I go back to the early days, one of my favorite cartoons was, one of those New Yorker cartoons with the marketing executive on the phone. And the caption says, yeah, half of my marketing's great, half of it sucks. I just don't know which is which. You remember those days? Okay, and what changed was marketing automation platforms. Because number one, it took the magic out. They knew exactly what marketing worked and what didn't, and it became repeatable.
And they got a hard ROI.
And by the way, they got a hard ROI, and now there's a CMO. Okay, so I think there's, if you put all this stuff together here, all those pieces need to come into play. You have to manage it professionally. You need an ROI. You need to be able to measure it. And what you need is an automation platform to do those things. And then all of a sudden it becomes tangible, it becomes strategic, and you can manage it strategically.
Right.
What's interesting for me is that, number one, I completely agree with this last comment in particular. I think this is just
Because he wants to be the CPO of SAP.
You and Rodolfo, maybe.
Maybe not.
But in technology, particularly, the epitome of the strategic relationship is a term only we could come up with: the virtual joint venture.
Yes.
Right? The virtual joint venture. Don't set up an actual legal entity. We'll just rebadge some people to a virtual joint venture. We'll pay them on their joint success. Right? Accenture, Microsoft, Accenture, Cisco, Accenture, all these SIs and all these different technology partners do virtual joint ventures where they're actually measured on the sales of the combined opportunity of the two companies. Okay, let's just back up. All strategic partners have the same opportunity. It's just if you have the lever to pull to get somebody at a virtual joint venture or maybe at a real joint venture level who has a CEO and has a number for the partnership, right? So if you have a capability and a platform and ability to measure and manage, you can actually call all of these strategic partnerships VJVs, right?
Yep.
Because you actually have a number. And you won't get on that C-suite level unless you got a number.
Yeah.
And right now, the only number that's carried, to be honest, is the Chief Revenue Officer.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So unless you're going to be at parity, to get on that list, you're going to report to the Chief Revenue Officer. Because your strategic relationship should be, in your previous slide, addressing those issues, which are generally driving revenue for the company. Revenue, margin, presence, right? So I think there's a model that's known and works to be the virtual joint venture or the real one. That's the only time they actually coalesce systems. They share a CRM, share goals. WorkSpan brings that. All your
Yep. Well, yeah, that's a great point. I call it the quasi-joint venture. It's the same thing, right? So essentially, you coalesce or fuse a piece of company B together with one metric, right? You're not selling product, you're not selling services, you're selling a solution, which is a SOW with the product, and you have a sales force for that virtual joint venture, right? You have some marketing, it's run as its own company. It can essentially abstract away from the system and run on its own, right? Now that's what's going to make it super strategic and successful.
It also abstracts away from the customer's perspective.
Right.
Right? So there's one person,
To deal
quote
with.
unquote, wearing the coat that's coming up representing the
Yeah.
collective.
The other thing that managing strategically is all about is like holding people accountable. I'm astonished by how much crap alliance people can get away with. The story of one of Ray's peers said the story. He said, "Here's how it works. So I got my spreadsheet, and we're doing a QBR, and we're looking for the goals for the quarter, and we realized that we can use the same goals from last quarter because no one knew what they were. So we'll just copy and paste the goals from the last quarter and pull it over. And then somebody says, but wait a minute, we tracked this. No, just move it over. Move it over. I mean, anybody who's tracking something strategically and came up with that kind of crap would be on their butt, right? But we got that phenomenon of we'll hire the guy that's not the sharpest, we'll not give him too much money, we'll say the right thing, and then we'll let him get away with that kind of stuff. But I mean, what you said, Ray, which was interesting, which is like a joint venture where everything is lined up: sales, solutions, support, go-to-market, systems, marketing. You don't get away with crap because you actually have all that stuff together. And I think what you're right, which is that if you have an engagement platform to facilitate go-to-market across all those dimensions, you have a place where that accountability can be seen. And if you don't have if you can't put your eyes on the accountable activities, then there's no way you're going to have the expectation that you can perform well. Yeah.
When Andrew showed me, gave me a sneak preview of the new capabilities, the joint solutions and the joint sales a couple weeks ago, remember what I said? When I saw this, I said, my God, that's a QBR in a browser, right? And it's always there, right? The metrics, right? The performance against target, right? A single view of the truth, right? Translucency, right? Visible to anybody, right? You need to escalate that view to your chief financial officer or somebody who's maybe preparing for a board meeting. You know, you don't have to wait for a spreadsheet, and you don't have to put any doubt into what's on there because it's an already agreed upon number that's being measured in real time with all of the supporting documentation and activity also there, right? So it's really trustable information. QBR to portal, pretty amazing.
That's cool. Anything else on these factors that are keeping us from becoming C-suite members?
Maybe, again, I want to be the provocative, but how much do we love our life partners?
Or live?
life partners, life partners meaning
Spouses?
wife, spouses, and so on.
Or the real partners.
Yeah, the bosses and whatever you call them. But you know, it's not 10, it's not 12, it's not 100, but a lot. And sometimes it's not quantified, you just say that. And so what I'm just going to throw in is, there is an element like the 50% we talked about earlier, which is the billboard on 101, which is the event, if you're out from a marketing standpoint, which inherently is not measurable. So they striking lights innovation of something that comes up of creative thinking of two partners might not lead in the next 6-12 months to the ROI that the CEO is looking for, but might bring that innovation that allow us from a product standpoint, organization to lead forward. How do you measure that? Well, you can't.
Yeah.
And how does the organization cope with that?
Just to build on that comment, I thought that was excellent comment. If you think about all the people in the C-suite, they have qualitative goals to meet and quantitative goals to meet, right? None of those guys are just pure by the numbers, guys who are there just because they can manage a number. So let's pick up the CMO. He has to worry about the brand as well as the demand gen, right? The demand gen is the quantitative part. The brand, are you still relevant to the world as it exists today, which is different from what it existed yesterday or last year? He has to manage both those sides. The engineering officer has to manage not only the release, development officer has to not only manage the release schedules, but also is he bringing the soft edge, the innovation that gives the relevance for the next 5 years in the market. Similarly, for the people officer, he's thinking about qualitative and she's thinking about quantitative. I think alliances also have to think qualitative and quantitative, and sometimes I feel that alliance officers tend to be not giving equal value to both, right? Sometimes they're too much on the relationship side, sometimes they are too much on the quantitative side. But to be at the CXO level, I think we have to get comfortable that partnerships are about preserving the future as much as continuing the existing revenue line, right? Both of them have to exist. You cannot just squeeze more and more out of the old relationships without taking the time to plant new, or drill new oil wells, right? And both of them have to exist hand in hand, and both of them need to be managed appropriately. You cannot bring revenue perspectives to a new oil drill. I'm mixing up analogies. but getting comfortable and having a system and having the right people in the right places to go do that. I think it deserves, it's a skill at the C level, qualitative and quantitative, and it needs to be up there.
Well, what's interesting is like when often you think about chief partner officer, why I was pleased to hear this one. Why that you don't hear it that often. I think it has to do with discipline, like selling, chief customer officer, chief sales officer, marketing, chief marketing officer, operating, chief operating officer, and so forth and so on. The concept of partnering doesn't have that kind of gravity. When you think about it, like, I'm really good at partnering. What does that mean? And what I wonder about is it's awfully daunting to imagine a polygamous world in which, if you really take this model that WorkSpan has out to its nth degree, we're going to have all this really interesting bottom-up local market partnering coming along. You're on the network, we're on the network, 3-4 partners find each other, endorse each other. It's going to be kind of a wild ride, but I think what's going to happen is we're going to have this time where partnering is going to become a core competency of the organization, not just this sloppy thing that we do. And in order for it to happen, you've got to have qualitative, quantitative, stuff that's keeping the lights on, innovation, and then all the stuff that we've been talking about, hard measures. But if partnering could achieve that level of discipline, like, wow, I'm a partnering expert, and that didn't go what?
Try this test. Try to go to your family, and they say, Dad, what do you do? I run alliances. What is that?
What is that?
I've got a 22-year-old son. Will you explain to me how you, what you, now you explain, I still don't understand what you do.
Yes, it's true. Great.
My wife barely knows.